Okay, we're laying under the power stroke today, and we're going to be dealing with this crappy, nasty weld that I never claimed I was a good welder, but it was a quick fix on this bracket. I have learned from my reading and research that this bracket, this is the lower end of your track bar, here's your track bar. This bracket was a notorious design flaw for 99 F350s. I guess maybe F250s, whatever, with this axle design, anyway. And so it's pervasive. A lot of people have had this issue with this bracket here breaking. And you can see where I welded it just the other day. Like I said, it's a pretty crappy looking weld. So I took it to a shop and asked them about fixing it, and they said, well, first off, you got to find that factory replacement bracket, and they acted like they couldn't find one. I never did try very hard myself. And then they said, well, you gotta get the old bracket off, which is welded on, and then you gotta find a beefed up a new bracket. So they said, if you can find us the factory bracket, we'll put some gussets in it and make it stronger. Well, I ended up finding one online that a guy custom builds. I think it's autofab.com, and it was expensive, no doubt about it. But it's his own custom bracket that he's built. It's a reinforced bracket. So I need to do some deconstruction here, if you will. I've got to take off, of course, the track bar, and I would like to take off my tie rods, and I don't know what all this nonsense is, but anyway, just basically take off all of this front suspension is my plan. I figure I can at least take the track bar off for now, because this bracket was totally broken. And the track bar, you know, was basically doing nothing. So I can go ahead and at least take it off. I'm trying to figure out what all I can take off and be able to still drive the truck down the road. But then at some point I'm going to have to go over to my in-laws' house where the better welder is at and weld the new bracket back on. So that's the plan anyway for what we're trying to do. I'm just kind of scouting things out today. Like I said, I'll see what bolts I can pull, but if I can only take off the track bar, that's hardly worth doing that one little bit. I'd just soon go on over to the shop and, you know, take everything off in one place. But basically, I'll have to, like I said, I'll have to take off the tie rods and all this stuff just so I can make space to get in here and work. And then I've got to cut this bracket off. You can see where it's welded. It's welded to the backup bracket right there, where it bolts on through the leaf spring shackles. And then let's see, so yeah, this weld has to be cut off here. This whole garbage has to come out. So I'll take everything off that's in the way in front of it, and then I'll get the smoke wrench out, and we'll take the rest of it off, and then I'll have to grind it all smooth and then go about welding the new one on, which I'll show you when I do. Okay, well, I missed the step-by-step, but it really is just nuts and bolts, so y'all can figure it out. Taking off the track bar, that's where the top end would be, and the lower end would be right there in that bolt hole, maybe that bolt hole. Lower end would have been over here somewhere. So I took the track bar off, took the steering stabilizer off, because both of those things, the steering stabilizer was actually an addition, I think, in the early 2000s or the late 99, so it'll be fine without that, at least for a 10-mile drive. And the track bar, of course, is broken, so it'll be fine without that for a short drive. Actually, I didn't tell you guys this, but my tires were so screwed up from this bracket being broken, you could run your hand across the tires and feel them choppy, ridges and low spots in the tires. So I actually just stopped at the tire shop yesterday and got these used tires. The tread life isn't great on them, but they're smooth at least. And it has a world of difference just on being able to drive down the road, because the other tires are so jacked. I mean, it was about to shake me out of the seat. So then I got my bracket mostly cut off here. It looks like complete crap. I'm not proud of it, but I'm working around all these bars in here. So I just was trying to cut off the bulk of it as much as I could before I go to take my tie rods off. So at this point, I'm going to pick up my tools, clean up my mess, and then we'll drive over to like I said, the in-laws shop, because that's where the better welder is at. And once we get over there, we'll pull this nut here, and there's a castle nut right up here, and one over here, and that'll take the tie rods off. Of course, we'll get the truck up on jack stands first, pull those off, get the tie rods out of the way, And then I should be able to lay in here nice and easy with my torch and cut the rest of that old piece off, and then we'll get it dressed up with a grinder and we'll go about welding the new one on. Okay, so we're over at the in-laws now, which is super nice because they've got this covered carport and concrete pad. Much more quality or luxury than I'm used to, but I'll show you here where we're at. I've got the tie rods taken loose. I could not get the top end, I could not get that one to pop loose just because I couldn't get a good reach up in there to get a hammer on it. I know guys use forks to beat them off, but I'm just not that worried about it because I just swung the tie rods around out of the way and they're out of my way. That's the only reason I'm taking them off, is just to make space. So again, track bar's off, tie rods are out of the way, and now you can see this hideous bracket. What I just sawed on it over at the house with the torch before coming over here, but you can see now this front part here is part of that old factory bracket. That's got to come off without damaging this part of the factory bracket. So we'll just kind of burn it off as best we can. I can use a cutting wheel and try to cut it off, but get all that off there and then get this factory part of the bracket here polished up. And then our new pieces here, I'll show you more about those later as we put them on, but this is the last for deconstruction. Get this garbage off there. I did have one of my U-bolts from my leaf springs, gave me fits and had to cut it off. I spent a whole bunch of time heating the nut and threading it off slow, and then it was somehow like, it was like the internal threads of the nut stripped off, but not the exterior. I don't really know, but it got to where it was just spinning, but not coming off anymore, but it didn't break it. So I ended up having to smoke it off anyway, which is kind of irritating because I spent like 10 minutes trying to be nice and take it off nicely and then cut it off with a torch anyway. But I'll have to get a new big bolt there. And so far, I think that's the only thing I've trashed. So that's it for tonight. We'll be back at it tomorrow. All right, well, I'll give you all an update on where we're at. A lot has changed. First of all, where we were working on the truck yesterday, I didn't think about it, but we weren't anywhere close to a welder plug. So today when I got back over here, we had to first put the tie rods back on, drive the truck back over here into the actual shop versus being outside in the carport where we could actually get a welder to it. Went ahead and got this all. This is where that plate was that I was showing you yesterday. Those remnants, got all that cut off, ground clean. And then yesterday, I think I mentioned pulling this U-bolt out, the thread stripped, and I had to actually cut it off with a torch. And I thought, that's no big deal. I'll just go to any one of these auto parts stores and buy a bolt, except that none of them had the bolt that I need. This thing has a specific width to it. It's like probably right at about 3 inches. And everything they had was 2 5/8 or 2 3/4 or 3 3/8. So Advanced Auto or AutoZone had a little bit more selection than O'Reilly's, but neither one of them had what I actually needed, which just blew my mind. So what I ended up doing is pretty ghetto fabulous, but I actually went and bought a 5/8 grade 8 bolt. So you notice these threads are very large and these threads are very small. Cut the head off the bolt. Here's what's left of it. Cut the head off the bolt, cut off the rough cut from the weld, and then welded that bolt back on. That's not what I would like to do. That's not ideal, but it'll get it back together and get this done today, and I can go, I guess, to Ford and order the proper size U-bolt here, because it's just, I don't know how else to, I guess I'll measure the ID on it here before I call them and see what it needs to be, but I couldn't believe that all the universal sizes that they had, none of them fit this. I'm like, for the love of Pete, it's a 99 F350. There's probably a million of these things running around on the roads, and the auto parts stores don't have, the universal kits don't fit it. Anyway, so got that cleaned up, and then we are now in the process of dry fitting. So I had to put my big plate here, put it up on the bottom. I've got my drag link all dry fit and bolted through, and then this other little plate here goes on the back. I should have showed it to you when I had it dry fit, but you dry fit everything together, and then with this on it and everything bolted up tight, and tack weld. So I've got a little tack weld right here. So now I'm going to go through and I'm just going to extend this weld all the way across. So what this will ultimately do is, you've got 4 bolts in the bottom down here, obviously, that are matching up those 4 bolt holes to hold that plate up, and then this will be welded here. And then when this all sets up, this slope here does not match this slope. It cuts down across at an angle like this, so it gives you a good surface to weld to. So you weld this tight, bolt everything up tight, and then weld again. and that gives you a good solid bolted and welded brace. So I'm going to work on that now, get this welded, and then we'll get it bolted up and welded again. Well, that ain't half bad. I'm sure there's going to be some pro welders out there that are going to laugh and put their comment down about how crappy this weld is. But it's got good penetration on it, and for a horizontal weld, which this is probably the first one I've ever done in my life that I can really think of, a horizontal underneath, I should say, not horizontal on top. So, you know, it's wanting to run. I maybe had my amperage set a little high, but I was doing that so that I would get better, better penetration, not be sticking as much. So, you know, for being the first time that I've tried to seriously weld with a stick welder in about 10 years, I'm pretty happy with it. And again, this is just kind of a reinforcing support weld anyway, because again, the whole thing's going to be bolted, which the factory piece wasn't bolted at all. It was actually just welded right on here with two thin little welds. So this, I'm certain this is still going to be better than the factory bracket. But yeah, now the next step is I'll swing my plate back up here with the track bar in it, and we'll get everything lined up and go ahead and bolt it tight and then weld it in place. So here's one little shop trick I'll tell you guys. I learned this when I was in high school working at a heavy equipment implement dealer. This bolt has to slide through the bracket and then through all the track bar assembly, and I'm having a hard time getting those bolt holes lined up just perfectly, and this bolt doesn't want to go through. So what I did was I put the nut on the bolt. Of course it's off now, but I put it on here well past where I needed to work, and then just ground just a little taper. Just put a little taper on the end of that bolt, and that'll make a world of difference on helping that bolt just guide its way through all those holes. And of course, once it pulls through, you know, then it's going to be fine. But the important part is put your nut on first, and try to make, you know, obviously as clean of a taper as you can. So then when you back that nut off, it'll actually help cut those threads clean. So you can see here where it had to cut. Oops, right here maybe. You can see where it had to kind of cut new threads across where I'd ground it. So it'll cut them clean. If you have a nut that's not the actual nut that you need to use but will fit these same threads, I would use a different nut, especially if you can get like a grade 8. Or of course if you have a tap and die set, that'd be really nice, which I do have one somewhere in a box in the shipping container, but I have one. I don't have one with me. So I just used the nut, was careful, it worked fine. When you go to take your nut back off, use some oil, WD-40 or whatever. Don't back the nut all the way off in the first run. Back it about halfway off and then run back down, and do that a couple times to make sure that you're actually cleaning your threads out. The first time that I backed it up here and then ran it down, I had some slivers of metal come out, which was where it had cut threads. So halfway off, back on, halfway off, back on, and then about the third time you can zip it all the way off and it's good to go. So just figured I'd share that with you. I'm fixing to bolt everything up and then make my second one. Okay, so now I got it all bolted up tight underneath and bolted through the track bar there. And I tell you guys, that taper that I put on that bolt was a saving grace, because I don't know if when I welded this, if it warped just a little bit when I put the long weld or what, but I went to line everything back up and it didn't want to go. I had to do a little bit of convincing. My U-bolts pushed up, and so I had to actually hammer them back down, and then I did have to thump on that a little bit to get it to go through. But again, because I put that taper, it helped suck it on through, and everything bolted up good. I didn't mar any threads. So it's all bolted up tight now. I'll put my weld across here, and then I'll actually have to take these two bolts back out, and there's another bracket that I'll show you that's for my steering stabilizer. So let's get that weld done, and I'll get that steering stabilizer on, and then it's done. Okay, so there's our final weld up top. I actually made 2 passes on that. You can see where the beads overlap a little bit. Really, I was comfortable with the first one. I thought the first one was more than enough, but I was feeling good, and I actually enjoyed doing the welds, because out of this whole project, the welding has actually been the easiest part, I think. It was all the cutting and grinding and bolting up that really sucked. So I've got my last bracket back on here. I told you all that. This is just for the steering stabilizer. So there'll be a bolt to the end of the steering stabilizer that goes here, and then it comes out this direction and clamps onto the tie rod ends. I'll show you that here when we get it hooked up. But with that, this kit is on. So again, I bought this kit from autofab.com. When I took the truck to a shop to ask them about this bracket, they said, well, what you'll have to do is you'll have to go get a Ford factory bracket, bring it to us, we will reinforce it and cut the old one off, put the new one on for you. So I got to looking around online trying to find that factory replacement bracket, and I found this one instead. I mean, this sucker is beefy. It is solid. It is a million times, just better all around that I can tell than the little Ford flimsy one that was on there. So as much as I like Fords, I don't like when I find design flaws like that. But it's good that somebody out there has made a solution. So again, that was bought from autofab.com. Give that guy a little props. I have no idea who he is, but he made me a good bracket that I like. So we're all bolted up tight. We will get our tie rods and everything hooked back up, our steering stabilizer back on. And
you want that light?
No, I got it. All right. Oh yeah, I'll take it. All right, so that's it. Everything's finally done and buttoned up. So you see we got our tie rod back on there, and our lower that steering stabilizer there, and then our track bar is bolted up there, and then our driver's side lower tie rod end over there, and the upper tie rod on the steering arm, and then here's our shock absorber, our steering stabilizer there, bolted back on the tie rod. So everything's bolted up tight. We're just going to go through and torque down the lug nuts on the tires, and then since I'm under here, I'm going to go ahead and hit these, hit all these grease zerks that I can find. Might as well. But that's it. That's your replacement and your repair for that lower track bar bracket, broken track bar bracket. So yeah, we're pulled out of the shop, all finished up. Looking good underneath, I guess. We'll see how it drives on the way home. But go figure, this is just like me. I just bought these used tires Friday because I was aggravated with how bad it was shaking, how bad the other tires were chewed up, and it's Sunday afternoon. So that's probably money that I did not need to spend. But these tires are on, they're balanced, they'll get me a couple more months, so it's not money wasted, and it'll give me an opportunity to take my truck to a suspension shop and let them check everything on the alignment and everything and make sure that's all good before I go spend money on new tires, because my back tires get a little slick anyway. So all in on this job, I think, I mean, it's 5:30 now. I started working on it today. I came over here with it today. It was noon when I got here, so 5.5 hours. But I got here and then immediately had to go back to town to get more parts. So I spent every bit of an hour and a half this morning, an hour to an hour and a half this afternoon, back and forth for parts. I spent probably, I'll just round up and say I spent an hour yesterday, Saturday, taking off the steering stabilizer and the track bar originally and starting to cut that bracket over at the house. And then I spent maybe an hour yesterday evening over here at the in-laws house taking off the tie rods, which of course then we had to put back on this morning to move the truck, which that only took like 15 minutes to put them back on. So that wasn't a big deal. But yeah, all in time on this job, if everything had gone smoothly and I had planned it properly, it would have been done in less than 5 hours, no doubt about it. So the bracket was $300 with the steering stabilizer bracket. I think all in after shipping and taxes, it was like $380 for all of it. And 5 hours of real labor, throw on another 5 hours of, nonsense running around. So just say 10 hours total. So I'm thinking, at any given shop, if it would have took them 5 hours, that would have been $500 plus they would have had to buy the bracket at another $300. So, that's kind of my target. I tell you guys, kind of joking, kind of serious. My goal in life is to make $100 an hour one way or another. So I spend 5 hours on this, save myself $500 cash. It would have been at least $500 for sure. I'm thinking would have been closer to $1,000 to have that shop do it all. So yeah, I'm happy. 99 Ford F350, lower track bar bracket. It was just a Ford design flaw from what I understand. So hopefully this new beefed up super bracket will do the part to keep this puppy going for another couple 100,000 miles anyway. That's it.